Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are, what time you are listening to this. My name is Winston, the content marketing guy. And today I have an absolutely amazing guest. I'm so happy he agreed to come on here and actually share his knowledge, his expertise with us. Benji Hyam, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Benji.
Yep, you got it right.
All right, awesome. So for me, not many people may know about Benji, but for me, Benji is one of those hidden gems that's yet to be discovered. But he's absolutely amazing. And the reason why I say that, with his company, Grow and Convert that he started with another co-founder by the name of Devesh. I actually came across Benji on LinkedIn, saw the content that he was putting out, decided to actually click and read his blog, which for me is a big deal these days because I hardly go on anyone's blog to read anything. But one of the things that really stood out to me, and even more so why I wanted Benji on the podcast, is his blog, or the company's blog, Grow and Convert, that he does with Devesh, is so detailed and it's packed with a lot of practical, actionable insights, which is what I love. And the thing about it is, it's not the type of content that you can do a simple Google search and find the top 5 marketing trends of 2020. No, it's really in-depth, it's detailed. There are case studies from clients that they've worked with in the past or current clients. And you can really tell that it's a wealth of knowledge and information. So just to get in a bit about who Benji is as, the amazing, phenom that he is. As I mentioned, he's a co-founder of Grow and Convert, which is a content marketing agency. And as the name suggests, they help their clients, grow their website traffic and then convert that traffic to actual clients and customers. Before, he actually co-founded another company called Wordable, which was acquired. And he has worked in several marketing roles as Director of Growth Marketing, Director of Sales and Marketing, Head of Promotions, Marketing Manager, Social Media Manager. So suffice to say that he knows a lot about marketing. So, well, that was a mouthful. Benji, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So before we even get into, the nitty-gritty, as I like to call it, of marketing, why don't you just share your story with us, your journey of how you actually started out your career in marketing to where you are right now, being the co-founder of Grow and Convert.
Yeah, I'll take you all the way back. So I had no clue what I wanted to do in life, I would say, before high school. And I randomly took a class in high school. I was on marketing, which I think is really rare for most people. I don't think most high schools offer a marketing class, but it was right from then that I figured out that this is what I wanted to do. And I think that was my junior year in high school. Prior to that, I did horribly in school. I wasn't really motivated, but right when I found that marketing class, that's what started to motivate me. And from then on, I had to kick myself into gear to actually get good grades so I can get into college. And I went to San Diego State for integrated marketing communications. And then coming out of that, I worked at a friend's startup that was doing screen printing. And because of that job, I had built up my LinkedIn profile. This is back in 2009, really before many people were on the platform. And I randomly got a message from a hiring manager at a company that I ended up working for called Vistage International saying, hey, I was doing some research for some marketing people, found your profile, would love if you'd come interview for this role at the company. And that's kind of what kicked off my career. So I took that job actually before I graduated college. It was 6 months before I was actually supposed to graduate. And that's kind of what kickstarted my career. I joined the company as a social media coordinator. The first thing that they wanted me to do was to just kind of do something with the blog that they had. And in that first year, I was able to grow their blog from about 1,000 visitors to 20,000 visitors a month. And that's kind of when I really learned about content and content marketing. I really knew nothing about it before then. And then from there, I actually wasn't sure that I wanted to stay in content marketing. I was still kind of exploring what area of marketing I wanted my specialty to be. So from there, I took a Google AdWords certification. I started getting more involved on the paid side of things. I ran LinkedIn paid ads back in 2010, did Google AdWords, and started to learn SEO as well. And then my goal was just to run marketing for a company, just to kind of get a lot broader knowledge. And so I ended up leaving San Diego after 4 years of working at various companies down here, moved to San Francisco, ran marketing for 2 different startups up there. And then through that experience, I also just kind of realized that I liked doing the day-to-day work more than managing people. So my job went from kind of individual contributor to managing a team of people, and I felt less involved in the day-to-day. And so I decided that I wanted to go back and specialize, and that's kind of where I came back full circle into content marketing. However, instead of joining a company to do that, we ended up just starting our blog, and that turned into a business, and that's kind of how we got to where we're at today. So it took about 18 months to start making any money with Grow and Convert. Again, it just started as a blog teaching content marketing and what I had learned through various roles in my career. And like you said in the intro, the differentiator and what we wanted to do was that first startup that I worked at in San Francisco, I knew that I wanted content marketing to be a channel for the company. I saw there was a huge opportunity to write content around software development that was actually focused on helping entrepreneurs build products. And I didn't see too many other people doing that. And when I'd started researching basically how I was going to grow that company through content, there weren't many helpful resources for me out there. And so I ended up having to learn through trial and error. And so when we started our blog, I basically created the resource that I wish I had always had when I was trying to learn how to do content marketing myself. And so big philosophy is that we kind of share everything from failures, successes, the strategy, the case studies. We just kind of share everything that we can, make it super in depth so that it can really help people learn from our mistakes and from our learnings.
All right, awesome. And well, there are so many things I want to unpack from that. The first thing is going back to, you say you started out, wasn't really motivated to start any particular career path. And it's funny because it was the same thing for me, and I'm realizing the more marketers I speak to, I realize it's the same thing for them, where, whether it's high school, college, whatever, they didn't really know what they wanted to do, but they end up taking like this one marketing class. For me, I actually went to school to study computer science, specifically programming. And part of that program is it's mandatory to take one course that has nothing to do with your major. So I just randomly chose marketing and, did it that one semester and just ended up falling in love with it. Even ended up quitting my degree in computer science and just went all in marketing. So that's great. So you went full circle to content marketing. Tell us, because I've realized, I don't know how it is like in North America, whether it's US, Canada, but I know here in the Caribbean where I am, specifically Jamaica, there still isn't that value in terms of understanding the value of content marketing. So how did you navigate that plane? Was it difficult for you to really show whether it was the company or with your clients that you currently have the value of content marketing and getting that buy-in for it?
Yeah, in terms of our own company, it's not hard because we made a distinct decision when we started the agency and the blog to really not focus on educating people why content marketing is important, more to go after the people who are already investing in content marketing and wanted to do it better. And I actually think that's a good principle for anyone who has a business. Is it's much harder to convince someone to change their habits.
Right.
But it's a lot less difficult to convince someone that's already looking for an improvement to change something about the way that they're doing things or their process. And so for us, that's always been a focus for us, is just we wanted to take people who were investing in content marketing already, saw the value, and just wanted a new approach or a better way to do things. And so that's what our whole site is focused around. Going back earlier in my career, I think what convinced me that content marketing was valuable was a couple things. So one, I wouldn't consider myself a writer at all, even though that has become a big portion of my job. I always saw writing as just a way that I could educate people what I was doing. And for me, I had never written a blog post or really done much writing until that first career out of college. My boss, when I had taken over the blog and I was managing all these writers, she challenged me to just write a blog post. And she said, just write it on any topic. I don't really care what it is. You just need to write something because you're the one managing the blog. And I was like, I was dreading it. I didn't want to do that at all. But I wrote a blog post on Snuggies, which I don't know if a lot of people know what that is, but it was just kind of this like, it was this product that it was just kind of a dumb trend basically. But I wrote how the Snuggies were exploding back then. And I remember I published it and 400 people read the article. And I said, oh, this is really interesting. I think I was like 21 at the time. I said, 400 people care what I have to say about this topic. That's actually really interesting. So that's kind of when I started getting bought in. And then I think I wrote my next article and it was on something about LinkedIn, and that one got 20,000. And so I just started realizing this medium is very valuable to reach a wide net of people. And you could go speak in front of a group of people and maybe you influence 100 people. But if you're writing and publishing things online, you can reach thousands. And then through the various experiences I had in my career, I grew blogs to 20, 35,000 people that were reading these sites every month. And you start seeing business come in. And so that's kind of when I was sold on the process. And then it really just, when it transitioned to the business, I think one thing that I always took from every career was I always thought to myself, how can we approach things differently than the way that everyone else is doing it? I think there's all these common best practices that everyone's doing things. And a lot of people don't question why they're done the way that they are. So like one example of that is just like the common wisdom around ebooks and white papers as like a downloadable asset is the way that you drive business through content marketing. And I always just questioned why that was. And the more I dug into it, I couldn't find great answers. And so I started questioning in some of those different roles that I had. Are there other ways to get results, or do you need to get someone to download an ebook or a white paper or some asset before they're going to become a lead and want to do business with the company? And so I started just running different tests around that, and I just kind of realized you could actually get better results from not taking that approach and kind of doing things differently than what everyone else was doing. And so that kind of formed the original thesis for how we were going to do content marketing differently than any other agency, and how we were going to approach content marketing differently by focusing on, one, driving conversions first, because almost every other content marketer and agency is focused on traffic as their main metric. And so if you just focus on conversions as the main goal, it kind of flips the mindset of how you need to do things. It changes what topics you need to write about. It changes the way that you approach writing. It changes the way that you approach SEO. And so flipping the mindset to conversions first kind of informed how we needed to do everything for the agency. And then it was just a challenge of the last 3 or 4 years figuring out what the right processes and what the right way to approach things were going to be.
Right. Well, I'm like, as you're speaking, I'm literally like making bullet points in my head of so many things that I want to ask.
Sure.
But I think the first thing really is, and you mentioned a very interesting point, which I completely agree with because I see it as well, where marketers use things like, whether it's website traffic, or in the case of social media, growing a following or engagement. And I'm not saying these metrics aren't important, but they don't drive business results. And out of a lot of heads of marketing, CMOs that I speak to, I realize that their main challenge is, how do we actually, so we know how to create the demand, we know how to drive leads, or whether it's inbound, outbound, whatever the case may be. But how do they actually make that conversion from a demand or a lead to an actual customer or client? I don't know if you have any insights around that, based on what has worked for you guys at Grow and Convert.
Yeah, that was the first challenge that we needed to figure out. And so I think the common problem that I see is most people just say, there's no perfect way to measure the amount of customers or leads or anything that you get from content marketing. So we're just not going to measure it at all. And we're going to focus on some other metrics such as traffic. And then the argument typically is by the CMO or whoever runs content marketing internally that, you know what, if traffic grows, some subset of the traffic will convert. And that's pretty much the extent of their traffic, their tracking. And so that's the core problem, is that most people just don't measure it. And so they really don't know the value of content marketing, what it's actually driving for them, if certain blog posts are doing better than the others. And so when we started the agency, we thought we want to hold ourselves accountable to conversions. And so the first thing that we need to do is figure out what's the proper way to track things. And so that we can make a case that what we're doing is actually driving ROI for the company. And so we do use, basically it took hiring a few different consultants to figure this out, but we use the model comparison tool in GA, which allows you to track blog post by blog post, what's converting. Again, it's not a perfect measure. So what we say is it's a lower limit of the actual amount of leads or total amount of customers you're getting from content, because you're only able to track if someone basically clicked into a blog post and then went around the site and converted somewhere else, or converted on that same blog post. But there's many other situations where you're not going to be able to track. Like if someone read a blog post and told their friend about the company and then converted, there's all these different things that you can't track. But that's also true for any other channel too. Like if you're doing straight advertising, you don't know if someone's going to see an ad and tell their friend about that too. So there's no perfect science to being able to measure this stuff, but what it does enable you to do is, if you're able to see what blog posts are driving conversions, yes, that's a lower limit, but it gives you an indication as to what's working, so that you can then double down on the things that do work and maybe do less of the things that aren't driving as many conversions visibly in Google Analytics.
Right. And just to segue into the next question, because I think I'm not 100%. I think because, trust me, when I discover the blog that you guys have, like I literally just like dive head first. I think I probably read like 3 or 4 articles in one day, after coming across you guys' content. And in one of those articles, you speak about customer content fit. And it was such a moment for me, in terms of, well, I'm not going to get too much into it. I'm going to allow you to really explain the process of, what is customer content fit, and how can, whether it's a content marketer, writer, copywriter, marketer, whoever it is, how can they create more content that's, customer centric, that can actually drive conversions?
Yeah. So that blog post was written after we did a workshop with a company in San Francisco. And what was really interesting was we had a lot of the company's customers in the room. And what we did is we pulled up the blog that they had already been publishing content to, and we started going topic by topic and just asking all the customers in the room, is this something that you actually have a problem with? Would you ever read a blog post like this? And the answer was overwhelmingly no. And the challenge is that a lot of companies or agencies or whoever's doing content marketing on behalf of a company, the way that most people approach ideation and what topics that they should choose is they either look up by keyword volume what's something that's on the topic and then just go after that, or they just kind of take a guess at what their customers would care about and then just start searching for topics that way. Or maybe someone on the team says, hey, you should go create a blog post on this topic. And so the way that most companies do topic ideation or content ideation is broken. It's basically approaching it with a guess or approaching it through SEO keyword volume. So what we do instead is we focus the whole first part of the engagement and the whole first part of our process on customer research. So what we want to do is we want to talk to people on the sales team, customer success team, the CEO, anyone who has direct interaction with customers, and ask them questions such as like, what are the challenges that these people have before they buy the product or service? Tell me about the last couple of sales calls that you had. What questions were these people asking? And what we're doing throughout this whole process is we're taking notes about the customer. What we're trying to figure out is two things. Who are these people? So what are their titles if it's in the B2B space? Who are the different stakeholders in the company that make this decision? And then what questions do they have? What challenges, what pain points? And then we basically compile all this information, look for patterns in the responses, and then back into what topics that we should write about. Why? Because then if you're approaching it from what the customers care about first and then backing into what keywords and topics you should write about later, you know the topics are actually going to resonate with the customers versus taking this kind of guessing approach. And this process, it just works so much better than what other people are doing. If you think most people are just kind of guessing what topics, and what happens is they write articles that are kind of on the topic, but they're not really that interesting to the customer, versus if you know what challenges and pain points these people have, and then you're writing blog posts that are directly related to that, there's a lot more conversion potential. And so we just kind of wanted to flip the script on the process and focus on figuring out what the customers care about first, and then figuring out what to write about secondary. And that's really helped us drive a lot more conversions. And that's kind of how we developed the concept also, pain point SEO, is just tying SEO keywords to actual pain points and challenges customers have, instead of just kind of sorting by volume.
All right. I think you just answered the next question, or one of the questions I have, which is, what makes your SEO strategy unique from what everyone else is doing? I can
dive into that a little. I think it's twofold. So one is that it's backing into what keywords you should target based on the pain point first. And so really understanding the customer's questions and challenges, and then trying to find keywords that show this similar intent. And so it's keyword secondary, pain point first. That's one thing. The second thing is that we realized, again, volume is not as important as search intent. And so oftentimes there are keywords that'll show up in SEO tools that show zero volume. Basically, it shows that no one's searching for this on a monthly basis, but it's just not true. And we've seen higher conversion rates and more leads come from content that we've written around a really high intent keyword that shows no volume, over going after some really high volume keywords that even have somewhat high intent as well. And so it's twofold. It's don't always just focus on SEO that shows volume, because if there's a high intent question or keyword that would lead someone to purchase the product, it's worth going after that, even if there's no volume shown anywhere. And two is just make sure you're focusing on intent first and volume second.
Right.
Yep.
But why do you think that is though? Because a lot of SEO, I guess you can call them experts, would say that, hey, if it's a high search volume, that means that, it's likely that a lot of customers are searching for this, which means, higher conversions and so on. So where's that disconnect, do you believe, between, because you said your approach is more focused on the intent than the volume. So in some cases you'll have high intent, low volume. But where's that disconnect then from a Google search standpoint, or the algorithm? I mean, I don't know. Probably you can help us understand where's the disconnect there.
Yeah, it's twofold. So the first problem is, again, going back to what people are measuring the success of. So like the incentives. So again, if most people are focused on just traffic and they're not measuring all the way through conversion, and then they're incentivized to choose keywords that show high volume because they're not tracking how much of the traffic is actually converting. So that's the first challenge with this. The second one is that a good way to think about it is, even for our own agency, most people might think we should go after the keyword content marketing because it has the highest volume in the space. But then if you really think about, if you take a step back and you think about who's actually searching for the keyword content marketing, it's people who maybe know nothing about the subject at this point and are just
Right.
researching to figure out what it is. Maybe someone's writing a research paper on the topic. It's just very high level. It doesn't indicate that anyone would ever need a service or that anyone has specific challenges. And so the approach that we take instead is, look, everyone that we've talked to in the agency and who follows our blog has very similar challenges. They're writing on the wrong topics, and they're just not sure why their blog posts aren't converting. They're not able to drive traffic to their blog posts. They think the writing quality is not good, and they don't understand why. They've tried to hire freelancers. There's these very specific challenges that people have. It's not just general searches on content marketing or content promotion. It's like, how do I drive more traffic to this specific blog post? Or how do I figure out better topics to write about? It's these very specific questions. And so I think most people just don't approach content marketing that way. Again, they think about what are the high level topics that I should own, like content marketing strategy, or just like these keywords. They're thinking about keyword first, and not really what is the person trying to accomplish when searching for this keyword, and then how can I help them? So that's just the difference in the approach. I think it stems from a measurement issue and people focusing on the measuring the wrong things. And so they see traffic going up and to the right, and they're thinking, this is great. But then someone else who is waiting for business to come in is saying, I'm not getting business, even though traffic is coming up. And so I think It's just a focus on measuring the wrong things. And if you switch your focus to measuring conversions first and really thinking through what your customers care about, and then figuring out what you should write to help them, it just kind of flips the whole mindset. And that's what we've seen work really well on the conversion side.
Right. And staying on that same topic, because one thing you mentioned early on is how you grew a blog from 1,000 visitors to about 20,000. And of course, there's Think Apps as well, where you mentioned you grew it from 0 to 35,000 unique visitors per month in less than 12 months. So what's your approach in terms of balancing the quality with the quantity? Because you can have a lot of unique visitors, a lot of people visiting your website, but it doesn't mean that they'll convert to actual customers. So what's your approach to balancing the quality and the quantity?
Yeah, quality always comes first. And so what I would say is make sure that you nail the quality first before you're trying to scale. So I think people always think, I need to scale things right away, or they try to develop a process around something because they think they need to optimize it. But oftentimes you're doing that too early before you've really figured out what works. And then the problem is you're scaling something that's not as effective. And so what I would say is, when it comes to writing quality or whatever the quality that you're trying to measure, just make sure you're doing things right before you scale it. So again, if you're producing content and you're not getting any leads, then writing more content is really not going to help you, because then you're scaling a process that's not working. Same thing on the writing quality standpoint. If you're writing articles that aren't impressive to your customer, and customers are reading it and they're just saying this isn't valuable or it's not helpful, writing more of that is not going to help you. And so I think you really need to focus on doing things right first, making sure you're getting leads, making sure the customers are impressed by your content. And then if you're able to do that well, then yes, it makes sense to scale it up, because if you do more of those activities, it will drive more results. However, I think the mistake that a lot of people make is they prioritize the process or the quantity before they really focus on understanding if they've done things properly. And I think that's what leads to just people wasting a lot of money or resources on just things that aren't going to drive real results down the road.
Yeah, so one of the final questions I want to ask, because I've been asking about a lot of pieces of your content strategy, how you approach executing content marketing. But like, for example, when you actually, that's if you can say, I'm not going to assume that you want to say, but if you can say, like, what's your approach in terms of your entire content strategy from, what are some of the things that people should consider first all the way, to the end when that strategy has actually been developed?
Yeah, I can share our whole process. So we have a 4-step process that we use. It's user research, then the content strategy and writing the articles, then it's promotion and conversions. What we like to say is that the whole foundation of our process stems from that customer research. And so again, what we do there is pre-COVID, we used to fly out to the company. We would meet with different stakeholders inside of the company. And then again, we try to figure out two things. Who are the customers? And then what are their pain points and why do they buy? From there, we do this whole session. We take all the notes and research. We look for patterns in the responses. And then basically we translate all that customer research into topics that we're going to write. And then what we do there is we'll test maybe 4 different types of articles in the beginning of our engagement, just to kind of see what works. Again, we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, and everything is kind of a hypothesis at this point. And then to write the articles, what we do to get around some of the challenges that I had mentioned before is we have a team of writers who are basically journalists, and they act as journalists to produce marketing content. So what does that mean? The way that most people produce content is they hire some freelance writer, they expect them to be the expert on the subject. That person Googles around, looks at the top 10 results, tries to compile something, and most of the time the customers can tell it's not written by someone who has any subject matter expertise. So what we do instead is our writers interview subject matter experts inside of the client's organization so that we can extract all the subject matter expertise from someone who lives and breathes this topic on a daily basis. And then we turn that into an article on the subject. And so again, we're just translating the expertise from someone who does this every day to an actual blog post. On the promotion side, we do 2 things. We think about it in short-term and long-term promotion tactics. Long-term would be SEO. So we do on-page optimization with a tool called ClearScope. And we also do link building selectively to articles. And then on the short-term side, we do a number of paid things on the paid side. 1, we do Facebook ads. 2, and so there's 3 things that we do within Facebook advertising. We do advertising to cold audiences, to lookalike audiences, and retargeting. We're experimenting with Twitter right now, and I've seen some really good results on the paid side from there. And the last experiment that we're currently testing is on Google Ads. So can we accelerate the results we're seeing on the SEO side by basically buying ads for the same keywords we're targeting? And that's still a really early test right now. Then if we do all those things well, we're probably 90% there. On the conversion side, again, we don't do ebooks or anything like that. All we do is put a call to action 3 places in the blog post, after the intro, somewhere in the middle, and somewhere at the end, with a call to action that's contextual to what the article is about. So let's say we were writing about content promotion on our own site. You might see a call to action that says, if you want to get paid, or if you want to get traffic like we've gotten for our clients, like sign up for our agency service here. And so if you do all those things well, you've kind of solved all the pieces of the puzzle. Again, instead of just writing on haphazard topics, you now know what things your customer cares about, and you're selecting topics that they truly care about and would impress them. 2, from a writing standpoint, instead of trusting someone who knows nothing about the subject to write about it, you're interviewing subject matter experts who live and breathe this on a daily basis and turning their interview into an article that can educate the customer. Instead of sitting around and waiting for Google to just rank your content, or driving short-term traffic and really trying to optimize SEO for the long term. And then instead of getting people to download an ebook or give them an email, we're getting people to actually buy products or buy a service. So that's kind of the whole process in a nutshell.
And how you get people to actually buy, as you mentioned, just to be clear for the audience, is through those call to actions throughout the article.
Yeah, but more than anything, it's knowing what topics will lead to people buying. So it's that pain point SEO approach versus just kind of selecting topics at random. It's a combination of knowing the keywords and topics that will have buying intent, combined with writing articles that impress them combined with getting it in front of them. And then yes, there's some call to action in the article. But yeah, it's the whole process that works. That's why when we decided to solve this problem as an agency, we didn't want to just be a writing service, because then you don't control the topics. We didn't want to just drive traffic to article, because then you don't control the topics or the writing. And so we really thought, if we're really going to solve it, we need to control the whole process around it. And that's kind of what leads to the results.
Right. Awesome. Wow. Benji, so much value.
Awesome.
I think I may have to listen back to this episode for my own benefit, because there's so much value, so much nuggets packed in it. Incredibly grateful for you taking the time to be on. Now, I don't know if there's anything you want to promote. I mean, I'll make a plug for you in terms of one of the things I know you guys got going on right now is your content marketing course. I don't know if it's still open, but that's one plug, guys. Go on growandconvert.com and check out that their content marketing course. I don't know if there's anything else you want to promote, but I just want to put that promotion out there for you.
Yeah, that's probably the most helpful. I think if anyone goes to our site, I think the articles will be helpful just as is. But if anyone wants more of our process and to learn that more in depth, then the course is where it's at. So we basically take our entire process that I talked about. So we talk about the customer research, the strategy, the writing, and there's modules on how to do everything for different types of businesses. And so it's a way more in-depth version, and beyond just writing through blogs, we share videos and screen share and give a ton of examples. So I think that's the most helpful way. If someone wanted to really learn this process, you could probably do it by going through all the articles on our website, or you can get a much more condensed version in the course that kind of walks through step by step.
All right, awesome. And of course, guys, if you're listening to this and you want to hire them to do, better find you on LinkedIn. Search for him, Benji, that's Benji Hyam, Hyam, and hit him up. Reach out to him. Definitely awesome, amazing content, amazing service. Benji, thanks again so much for coming on here, being a guest.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, awesome. Thanks again. Take care and all the best.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.